All right. Well, again, thank you all for joining me this afternoon. It's 1 o'clock here in Syracuse, New York. Cloudy day, but it's a summer day. And I hope that all those who have joined today, I hope that you and yours are all healthy and staying safe. We're going to talk about using JPay tablets for instruction with the News for You newspaper this afternoon. So for the next, just under an hour, I hope you're ready. I'm going to share a lot of information, and I hope you'll walk away with some fresh ideas. So today I'm going to ask and answer these questions. First, why use the news for reading, writing, and language instruction in the first place? Next, which resource or resources are good to use? And lastly, how do we use it effectively? And so, before I advance the slide, why don't you take just a couple of seconds to answer the first question yourself. Why use the news? And if you'd like to unmute and share a comment or two, I'm all for it.
As a former teacher, I will share the news, a comment, and that is, Greg, that anything that is relevant to students' lives makes it easy to engage them.
Great. Thank you. Well, yes. In fact, here you go. You may have come up with some of these reasons on your own, just yourselves. But as Dan said, yeah, anything that engages. For learners, especially reluctant learners, it's all about engagement and motivation, isn't it? I mean, speaking for myself, if I'm going to have to read something, it had better be something I'm interested in, or forget it. The news is full of current events and hot topics, compelling photos, catchy headlines. The articles are written for adults. There are no Dick, Jane, and Spot stories to belittle or discourage adult learners. But at the same time, the readings are manageable lengths. One story, one sitting. And finally, and these are just quickies that I came up with, it's information that is likely relevant to the reader and is an appropriate nonfiction resource from which the learners can practice close reading, citing evidence, and numerous other reading and fluency skills for academic, workforce, and life goals. So having said that, why isn't everyone using it? Well, let's consider what's out there. We've got the local paper. Pros and cons to using a local newspaper for instruction for your learners. For some, it's too local, right? This doesn't give us a broad enough scope, and it's only dealing with things that perhaps some of our learners, who are from all over the place, aren't in the least bit interested in. They're looking for something on a broader spectrum. But for local learners who are from that immediate area, then that may be exactly what they're looking for. We want things that are relevant to where we live. Now, that could be very different, in your setting and to your population. And then we've got the big paper, papers like the USA Today, the New York Times, the LA Times, Star Tribune, the Washington Post. Okay, well now we've got definitely a bigger field here, pros and cons. The pros I can think of is that these resources are going to share on a broader spectrum. You're going to get national, regional, international news. It's a big paper, well written. Many of them are going to be loaded with photographs. There's a lot to it, and there I gave away a con as well. There's a lot to it. Papers, whether national or local, can be intimidating because of the level at which they're written. The idioms, the jargon, the technical terms, the vocabulary in the paper can be discouraging. And there's so much and so much going on. And then there are ads. To some, the ads can be a pro. To many, it's just distracting and needless. And then there's just keeping up with it. What do we do with this huge periodical, every single week or day? There's just too much here. It's not usable. So let me introduce the News for You. The articles from the News for You newspaper are actually from the Washington Post and the Associated Press, but they're carefully rewritten with permission. 4 of the stories are at reading levels 4 to 6, like a low intermediate level for English language learners, and 3 are at levels 3 to 4, or like a high beginning. So 7 new stories every week. The articles cover current content on world and national news, the economy, health, education. What else is in there? History, science, the environment, sports, human interest, and animal stories, the arts, and more. And so there's so much you can do with the News for You. Now available on JPay tablets, your instructors and learners can access 7 new articles every week for everything from pleasure reading to reading and language instruction. Today, I'm going to show you just the tip of the iceberg by sharing some engaging activities that are in keeping with evidence-based reading instruction and address numerous Common Core and college and career readiness anchor standards. For those of you who may have joined me earlier for my evidence-based reading instruction presentation, you may see a few activities again, but with fresh examples and lots you haven't seen, so I hope you'll stick around. So before we jump into instruction of any kind, a warm-up is a good idea, yes? With News for You, what better way to start than with the story's photo? I believe it was David Confucius Gates who said and sang, "A picture paints 1,000 words." And if you got that lame joke, you're probably as old as I am, but David Gates from Bread and the song If. Anyway, the photos are great because they get people thinking without them even knowing it. So how can we use the photo? Okay, you could use the photo to introduce a phonics target and new vocabulary, right? You could ask students to look at a photo with people in it, have them interpret facial expressions and body language, discuss possible feelings of the character or characters in the photo, or maybe discuss how the photo makes them feel. And an activity like this for warm-up is especially good for helping English language learners to learn the vocabulary associated with emotions. You could ask students typical 5W questions: who, what, where, when, why. Throw in how for good measure. How, about what they see in the photo to help generate discussion, prepare them for the article. And ask students to look at a photo and predict what it will be about. And this is going back to what I said. Some of this happens unconsciously, whether we're students or just out there looking at a paperback in the store. What's the first thing we're drawn to? Well, if there's a photo or a picture, an illustration, that's what we look at, and then we try and glean from that. What's this going to be about? Am I going to be interested in this? And they might do this, make predictions using prior knowledge of the topic. They might take a look at the caption, the headline. They might use their imagination just from the photo itself. So just from the picture, we can paint 1,000 activities. And that wasn't David Confucius Gates. I said that. Here are a couple of great examples, just to give you some recent and not so recent articles from the News for You newspaper. This one, an international story on culture, possible discussion questions to throw out there. Where are these kids? What the heck are they doing? How do they feel? Look at the expression. Look at the expression on this child's face. Yeah, how do they feel? How would you feel? Are you afraid of being in high places? This is actually a super interesting story. Back, I think, from 2016 in the News for You. But great discussion builders here, and you could focus and use this for vocabulary as well. Here's a one from just a few weeks ago. It's a human interest story. A 100-year-old woman sent to jail on her birthday. I love this. What did this 100-year-old hoodlum do to get thrown into jail? I mean, you look at her. She's clearly a menace to society. Why is the police officer laughing? And this brings up a very good question. Should Geritol really be an over-the-counter drug? I don't know. But the story references a bucket list, and you can probably put the rest together for yourself. But, here's some great questions. What are some items you would have on your bucket list? Is this a strange thing to you? I'll bet it is to some of your readers. Another one on the environment this time, and another recent one, is people stay home. The earth turns wilder and cleaner. How are the photos on the left and right the same? You can see here on the left and on the right. How are they different? Where do you think the photos were taken? When were they taken? What is this a map of? What are the maps showing? Just discussion starters, and to generate and get them thinking and preparing for the story. One more. No blondes allowed. School experiment 50 years ago on history, on civics. How old was this photo? Where was it taken? What does the sign on the table say? What was school like for you? Wow. Did you belong to a group or a clique or a gang? Were some people mistreated when you were in school, and why? Based on an article you've decided to use, you could introduce a target sound, moving past the photo and onto, say, focus on the phonics. Introduce a target sound to the students using pictures, using realia, or other visual clues. You could make a list of the words, read the words aloud to the students, asking them to repeat the words after you. Here at a lower literacy level, you could have them brainstorm, dictate and copy other words that begin with the letter or sound. Depending on the reading ability, have students read an article or read it to them. Or have them read just several sentences, a paragraph that you put together that introduces the target sound. Ask them to identify words in the article that begin with a specific letter or sound. CH, for example, the ch sound. And make a list of the words. Read the words aloud to the students and have them repeat the words after you. Like China, Chinese, child, children, chat. I grabbed most of those from the article that I showed you with the kids on the cliff. and then have them brainstorm, dictate, and copy other words that begin with that ch sound. You could ask them to identify words in the article containing that ch sound found elsewhere in the word. For example, teach or teacher, watched, watching, rich, richer, richest. You could even have students, depending on level again, find homonyms or homophones in the article. You know, which of these words are spelled the same but have different meanings? Which of these words are spelled differently but have but are pronounced the same? There, to, and so on. And again, this all just for a good warm-up. So in this article, I decided to target the oo sound that double O makes. I would start by having the students call out things they see in the photo that have the oo sound. And they might come up with, and I might have to prompt them, prod them a little bit. They might come up with school or lunchroom or food, right? And it may take a few questions. Where are these people? What are they doing? What do you see? Then allow the students to come up with other words. And brainstorming, they might come up with cool, fool, tool. You could work there with word families: broom, doom, groom, hoop, or loop. Later, after we have read the passage, I'll have them go back and find oo words and possibly even point out words that don't follow the pattern. And in this article, the words school and Ann Cooper are there to be found. And then there are other words that are atypical and have a different pronunciation, like brotherhood, looks, and door. So a lot you can do here, and at different levels, depending on their level, just with phonics as a way to warm them up and get them moving. Vocabulary words are in bold print in the News for You articles, and the definitions are provided on the last page. They're grouped by article. Introducing the vocabulary prior to reading the text using direct instruction will improve their comprehension. Go over each word, indicating the part of speech. Depending on level, you could do things like count syllables for the words using clapping and rhythm. Give a definition for each word with a few good examples for each word, right? So you're explaining and then you're modeling. And then have students practice using the word. So that's direct instruction. Explain the new word, model the new word, and then let the students practice. Guided instruction. And the last step would be independent practice and applying the new word or skill. You could prepare the vocabulary questions the students can answer. Right? So here we have the words bullied. We present them with an example. So we're modeling, including the part of speech. And the questions that you prepare should use prior knowledge. They can answer these questions by using prior knowledge and or personal experiences or opinions. And this will help them relate to, understand, and remember the words. So, bullied. Do you know someone who was bullied? Why? Tolerance. Give 3 examples of tolerance in the U.S. Now they're working with the vocabulary and all this before they even enter the passage. Have you ever shown prejudice to someone else? How? What's an experiment you did or participated in? Tell about a time you experienced unfair treatment, personalization, prior knowledge. Here's an activity that you could use. First, introduce the spelling, pronunciation, and definition of the new word. The one that I've chosen here is bullied. All right. Frightened or hurt other weaker people. It's my definition that I provided for them. Next, model usage in 1 or 2 sentences. How about the 6th graders bullied the 3rd and 4th graders on the playground. The defense attorney bullied the witness with unfair questions until the judge made her stop. Right? So give them something that they can relate to, a few examples. Then, using blank index cards, have the students write the vocabulary word on one side, as I've done here with bullied. Then have them flip the card over and draw 2 perpendicular lines, and in the top space, have them write the definition in their own words. So maybe they chose to say it as picked on someone weaker. That's bullied. Good, in their own words so that they can relate to it. And then next, ask them to think of a synonym and or an antonym or opposite of the word. Why? Having them come up with similar or opposite words is a great vocabulary muscle builder. Identifying the word here, favored, or maybe preferred as the opposite of bullied, can give the student a better understanding of the word. And then you would have them write the word or words in this second box. And then finally, ask them to think of the word based on what they may already know about it and or their own personal experiences, and use it in a sentence. So maybe they've written, my neighbor bullied me when I was young. I bullied my little brother when we were young. My wife bullies me. But enough about me. So then you could conclude the activity by pairing up and sharing definitions, examples, and experiences. Remember, when they use the word in conversation, it's a powerful mnemonic tool. Before students read an article, have them preview it using the headline. Here we've gone through a number of different activities, and we haven't even gotten to the story yet. Have them preview it using the headline, the photo, and the caption. Right? Have them make predictions about the story. What do you think this is going to be about? Look at the photo. Look at the caption. Look at the headline. And set a purpose for reading. This would be a great opportunity to use a KWL chart. Right? What do you already know about this topic? What do you want to learn from the article? What did you learn from the article? And possibly using the 5 W's questions they may have already come up with if you did that exercise as the photo warm-up, right? Let's insert some of these 5 W's questions. What do you want to learn from the article, right? While they're reading, have them make connections to personal experiences. Visualize what they're reading. Underline, circle, or highlight important details. They could be underlining or circling answers to the 5 W's questions that they posed. They could be circling vocabulary definitions, right? If they can, if the definition is given in, with context clues. Or you could have them take notes that they could use to answer the questions after the reading, or possibly even to summarize or retell the story. So here's an excerpt from the story that I've been using so far about the no blondes allowed. As I read it aloud, visualize it and see if you can make any personal connections. Let's try this. No blondes allowed. On Monday, February 17th, students saw a sign hanging over the school's front door. It said, "Blondes use the side door." Jan Brown was a blonde 8th grader at the time. She remembers the day well. Dark-haired students were blocking the front door. When Brown went in the side door, she saw a banner saying, "No blondes allowed." It was strung across the stairwell. Visualizing? Making any personal connections here? I'll keep reading. Hall monitors teased and bullied blondes for 2 days. Teachers wouldn't call on blonde students. Blondes couldn't eat at the same lunch tables as other students. They had to use separate bathrooms and water fountains. As I read that, and as you read it now, what might you underline, circle, or highlight, or jot down? What do you see here? I mean, even as I read it, I was making some personal connections. I went to a small farm town school, graduated with 75 other students, and I was the only Asian in the whole school outside of my family members. Well, I experienced some of this to a degree in the 1960s and 70s. So now you could have them do that. Underline, circle some of the information. Maybe they found a few answers here as they read that pertain to their chart. So, okay, working with a partner, we could have the students retell the story in their own words. Now that we've worked through it, we could then have students answer your questions that you've made for them by rereading and citing evidence from the text. Or less work for you, more for them, have them write the questions and give them to a partner to answer, right? But these are text-dependent questions where they have to return to the text and read closely, gather evidence and information. Or if you used one, they could finish their KWL chart at this time. So great, post-reading activities as well. Here I'm just naming a few in the interest of time. Showing students how to organize and synthesize what they've read is so important. So use graphic organizers whenever you see an opportunity. Identifying the main idea, the key point, and supporting details. Identifying cause and effect. These are easy to make. They're also easy to find on the internet. Here's a great one. Compare and contrast, right? Our trusty Venn diagram. But this is so helpful so that they can organize their thoughts, organize what they've read, organize their writing later on. And it's an opportunity for you to see how your students organize and synthesize information. This article is actually perfect for illustrating cause and effect. Now, depending on the student level, you could make this a matching exercise, as I've done here, or you could give only the cause or only the effect and have the students provide its counterpart. So blondes were singled out in the experiment and treated badly. Okay, well, 2 students dyed their hair brown, and some blonde girls cried and went home early, and I'm pulling this right from the reading. Parents complained. Some blonde girls, the experiment was ended early. The school allowed the prejudice. Even the teachers participated. Some non-blondes became bullies as a result. Jan Brown was bullied for being a blonde. The experiment changed the way she thought. She started seeking out other kinds of friends. And lastly, and again, this from the passage, and there are more examples, I just didn't include, civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. was killed in '68, which led Principal Tom Warren to run an experiment at school to teach students about prejudice and social injustice. It's really, once you get the hang of this and start looking for opportunities in an article, you'll find that you have to pick and choose. It's like, gee, which one should I do today? Because you can do Venn diagrams, you can do cause and effects. Of course, very easy to make a graphic organizer pointing out the main point and the supporting details. More post-reading activities. How about visual literacy? This is something that our learners rarely have a good handle on, and in my opinion, it is underemphasized in education. You could use a graph or chart from an article to show students how to read it. Graphs, charts, diagrams. Our adult learners at this level are hard-pressed to be able to use these and understand them. You could ask questions about the chart or graph. Have students create their own chart or graph using information from the article. Right? If there's not a graph there, is there enough information here so that we can make our own? Often there is. There's a lot of information shared, and you could make a simple chart or graph. Or using data collected from the class. And this could be a poll or an opinion related to the story. Have students show the information by creating a different type of graph or chart. So if there's one provided, and say maybe it's a horizontal, a bar graph, then maybe have them show that information creating a vertical bar graph or a line graph or a pie graph. Or if they're artistic, have them make a pictograph, right? Articles sometimes identify a series of events that led up to the current news event. You could choose a story that includes a series of events and write each event, one per piece of paper or a big index card. Then have students read the article and pass out the index cards after they've read it. Ask one student to come to the front of the classroom and read his or her index card. Then ask the next student to come to the front and read his or her card, then take the appropriate position in relationship to the first student. Did this event happen before or after, right? Continue this process until you have a timeline, asking the students to read their events again at the end in chronological order. Just a way to get them up, get them moving, get them thinking. You could use the blonde theme as a launch pad and have students create their own graph using data from their class or cell block or what, I don't know, whatever. But here, the hair color in the class or the block, number of students with brown hair, with black hair, with blonde hair, with red hair, with white, silver, or gray hair. You might throw bald in there so that people like me don't feel left out. But here is some good examples, and have them present that using a pie graph, using a bar graph. Or using events from the text, have them create a timeline, as I explained earlier. And here you've got actual events from this article. I told you there's so much that you can do with just a single story. And I picked this pretty quickly too. And have them come up, and as they read, have them walk to the place where they should be standing until they've created a timeline for that article. Very easy to do and keeps them engaged. You can even work on math. News for You articles are packed with numbers, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, fractions and decimals, ratios, percents, or how about conversions? There are frequently references to metric measurements, to foreign currency, and a lot more. Fahrenheit, Celsius, right? Make the math real by applying it to the story and personal or class situations. I hated math when I was in school. Hated it, even into adulthood. Couldn't stand it. Why? Because it was just math. You know, and I couldn't relate to it, and I wasn't going to use it. You know, I'm sorry, I need algebra, why? I need geometry, why? And then one day someone explained it to me. Geometry, knucklehead. How much carpet do you need to buy? How much paint do you need? You know? And suddenly it made sense. You can do that with your learners by taking an article, using the math to apply it to something personal. I'll give you an example. Here, using the class data from the blonde graph activity that they had them create, right? Students could work on fractions, decimals, ratios, percents, right? 2/5 of the class have brown hair. 2/5, that's 4/10 or 0.4 or 40%, right? Ratios, 1-to-1 ratio, blondes compared to white, silver, or gray hairs. All kinds of things that you can do. Okay, moving on. For vocabulary review, use words from articles students have read in class. You could divide students into two teams. A student from the first team draws a piece of paper from envelope number 1 that you see here. Then envelope 1 contains 4 different tasks. There's pronounce the word, spell the word, define the word, and create a sentence with the word. The student then draws a vocabulary word from envelope 2. And here's a note, if the student drew spell the word from envelope 1, then he or she has to hand the vocabulary word to you without looking at it, otherwise it won't work. But now, if the student can do the task without help from the team, then the team gets 2 points. If the team helps, they still get a point. That's, collaboration, cooperation. If the team doesn't succeed, give team 2 a chance to steal the point. Or maybe steal is the wrong way to look at it. Give team 2 an opportunity to answer correctly and get the point. If team 2 tries and misses the question, then they lose a point. So there's a risk involved there. But here, just another activity that you can do to keep things fresh, keep them on their toes, and keep it engaging for them. Fluency. Improving reading and speaking fluency is important too. So here are some ideas to try after students are familiar with the text so that they're going to see improvement and be motivated by it, right? Echo reading. Read a sentence to the students or 2. Ask the students to then read them back to you, mimicking your pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation. That's echo reading. Paired reading, where the students alternate sentences. I read a sentence and my partner reads the next sentence, and back and forth. Duet reading, right? Use an article a little above the student's independent reading level. Explain that they might have difficulty keeping up, but that's okay. You're trying to help them practice recognizing words automatically in this activity. So you would read, modeling proper pace and emphasis and intonation, and the students would read along and try to keep up with you. Choral reading. Right? Use an article at their independent reading level. Read, modeling proper pace and prosody, and the students read along with you. Right? Everybody reading together. Here's a great one, popcorn reading. Students take turns reading aloud. They don't know who's going to be reading next, right? Just as we don't know which kernel of corn is going to pop next. One student would read a sentence or more and then say popcorn and call another student's name. That new student has to read one or two sentences and then popcorns someone else. And the students really stay on their toes. I've tried this and it really works, because they don't know who's going to be reading next, and they don't want to be caught off guard and be the person who missed. Or if you get the right class, orchestra reading. It's similar to popcorn reading, but you divide the class into sections, and instead of calling out popcorn and an individual's name, you call out the orchestra section, and that those students that you assigned to that group would read together, with you being the conductor, or maybe let other people have an opportunity to be the conductor. But again, if you get the right group, this makes it fun and competitive, because now it's a team thing. For writing practice, have students write comprehension questions and give them to a partner to answer. They could do the same with vocabulary words, right? Writing with vocabulary words. If it allows, have them work in pairs to write and perform a dialogue based on the story's photo. You get a photo that's got people in it, and they look like they're talking or could be. You know, have them getting inventive, creative, and you know, write and perform a dialogue. Again, you need to have the right class for this or people for this, but I've had success with it myself with adult learners. Or how about this? Ask students to read one of the articles in News for You. Then ask each student to write a summary. The twist is that the summary must be exactly 15 words long. This gives students practice finding the essential message of a story and expressing that message succinctly. If you want, you could ask students to pair up and proofread each other's summaries. Right? Then the author can refine and polish his or her work so that each summary has exactly the right number of words and captures the essence of the story. And as there's a discussion question provided in the teacher's guide for every article in News for You, you could turn that discussion question into a writing assignment. Or even have the students write a letter to the editor. You know, believe it or not, we get these from time to time, and for the record, letters to the editor that are received are most often from inmates. Kid you not. So I just mentioned the teacher's guide. I came up with all of these activities that I shared today on my own. And most were a piece of cake. I taught English myself for 8 years and have nearly 13 years on with New Readers Press and training. Yeah, but a few involved a little bit of prep. Folks, News for You comes with a teacher's guide for every issue. And each guide has a full lesson plan for one of the 2 front-page stories every week, aligned to a Common Core and College Career Readiness anchor standard. Every article has an activity, matching, true or false, multiple choice, fill in the blank, often using a graphic organizer. And they target skills and strategies like from counting syllables and doing phonics activities to vocabulary, synonyms, antonyms, homonyms, working with word parts, close reading, citing evidence from the passage, fact versus opinion, main idea and supporting details, compare and contrast, paragraph writing, and the list goes on. These are actual, I'm pulling these from recent teacher's guides. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a discussion question for each story, right? And an answer key that also indicates the reading level for each article. Here's what it looks like. I know this is a little hard to see, but here you have a full lesson with an anchor standard. It's here, and I just blown it up. All right, speaking and listening 1, prepare for and participate effectively in a range of conversations and collaborations with diverse partners, building on others' ideas and expressing their own clearly and persuasively. And you got a whole lesson plan here. This story, Stop Touching Your Face, this was prompted, from the COVID-19 virus. Here at reading levels 3 to 4, health story. And it gives you a full lesson plan. Lots of good ideas. And here blown up is the answer key with the reading levels for each of the 7 articles. So you as the instructor can use this to determine, which article or articles do I want to assign to my learners based on their level of ability. And an activity and discussion question for every story. This is the teacher's guide that we put out every week. Here is a writing activity for the blonde story that we talked about today. Right? Your opinion. Do you think the experiment was a good idea? Why or why not? Write a paragraph. Give 3 reasons for your answer, then talk about the discussion question. If this was me, I would say also use at least 3 of the vocabulary words in your paragraph. Right? But these are already done for you every week. So many jails and prisons across the country subscribe to News for You. Many will continue to have the print version delivered, either because they don't have tablets for their inmates yet, or because the newspaper is simply a better fit for their classroom-style use. There are different reasons. I don't see the print subscription stopping anytime soon. They just eat them up. But most facilities order only enough for a fraction of their population. Using JPay, you could make the news available to everyone with a tablet for one ridiculously low price. A multi-site or a statewide subscription, if you can get something like that going, talk to your soup. If you are a soup, talk about it. You could save even more. And as each weekly issue is stored and easily accessible, it's a great way to build your own news archive and reading and language instruction archive for your facility. You start building the archive as soon as you subscribe, and you get all of these issues. In closing, I hope the takeaway from the session is simply this. There are so many ways to use News for You, whether it's for pre-HSE test preparation, adult basic literacy, or ESL. Whether it's class instruction, one-on-one, independent study, or recreational reading. The high-interest content, the level of complexity, the built-in learning features, and the numerous activities and exercises you can easily make and that are already made for you, in my opinion, move News for You from the supplemental resource list to the essential resource list. I'd like to thank you all for joining today, and doggone it, I said I hoped that we'd have time, and I did hope that we'd have time. Says that we've been on for about, no, we do have a couple of minutes yet, about 9 minutes left. If you'd like to unmute yourself, I welcome you to do so. If you have any questions, comments. If not, then I'm going to thank you again for joining today. Please share this information with your colleagues, with a supervisor if that's not you, with your coordinator, lead teacher. In my opinion, sales hat off, educator hat on, it's a great opportunity for your facility, for your end users, and for you to make your job, if you're one of the instructors, easier and your performance more effective. Thanks again. Have a great rest of the day. Greg Stultz with New Readers Press, signing off.